afternoon, madame.
Yes, what is it?
I'm sorry to bother you. I was told about an apartment.
Roman Polanski's The Tenant is the last film in a thematic series known as the Apartment Trilogy, beginning with Repulsion in 1965 and followed by Rosemary's Baby in 1968. These films are linked by a pervasive horror, derived from perceptual crises and the upheaval of identity that dominate and consume the protagonists in the one place they should feel safe, their homes.
The previous tenant threw herself out of the window.
Polanski explores the home as an extension of the subjective experience of the self and of the many illusions to which it is vulnerable. Thanks to the success of Rosemary's Baby, Polanski is sometimes billed as a horror director. But to be fair, it is also his skill in depicting psychological states of extremis, altered perception, and fragmented identity across much of his body of work that contributes to this reputation. Nowhere is this more evident than in his 1976 film, The Tenant.
He's gonna have to fix that.
Polanski came of age as a filmmaker during an era well known for challenging depictions of psychological turmoil, from Ingmar Bergman's Persona to Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. For Polanski, however, it wasn't anything as specific as the Cold War, economic recession, or Vietnam that interested him, but rather the lingering effects of the schizoid nature of utilitarian modernity. The ultimate symbol of this in the Apartment Trilogy is the apartment itself. As distinct from a house, the rented flat's promise of security and privacy is illusory due to its provisional nature. The front door locks, but the landlord has a key. Audible noise is restricted in the evenings. Passing neighbors cannot help but glance through any open door, nullifying any promise of absolute privacy. The apartment dweller is placed into a paradoxical state. By decorating the walls and surrounding himself with his possessions, he allows his identity to expand into his surroundings, even as outside forces threaten to collapse it. The protagonist of The Tenant, Trukowski, is something of a blank slate. We are given only his surname, the fact that he is a French citizen of Polish origin, and a few glimpses of his somewhat Kafkaesque job as a clerk in an unknown office. When he applies to rent the apartment, he is asked how he found out about the vacancy.
A friend of mine. A relation, actually.
These are the only details that the film divulges regarding Trukowski's personal history.
Are you a friend of hers?
A vague sketch that barely indicates his existence at all. When the former tenant of the apartment, Simone Schul, dies in a hospital after attempting suicide, nobody claims her belongings, so Trukowski decides to simply incorporate his belongings with hers. Trukowski is drawn to these objects and begins placing his identity with that of Simone. Though he possesses his own habits, it is clear these traits exist only as a means of differentiation from those of Simone. As with Rosemary's Baby, the film begins with a long, roaming shot of the apartment building. This time, however, the untethered camera hints of the plot to come, indicating the circular nature of the narrative. In the end, Trukowski's own attempt at suicide completes his apparent transformation into Simone. But this is not what constitutes his final nightmare. He wakes to find himself transported back to the hospital in which Simone died, but this time from the point of view of Simone's place on the bed. It is the ultimate impossibility of staring into his own face that awakens his mind to the unspeakable realization that all references to who he thought he was have been stripped away. Just past the halfway point, we are given a rare look into Trukowski's own mind. After a night of drinking, he lays down and ruminates.
If you cut off my head, what would I say? Me and my head, or me and my body? What right has my head to call itself me?
Already, Trukowski is beginning to see the abyss below him and the flimsiness of the scaffolding on which he stands. The question is whether to jump or wait to fall.